The sharp crack of Admiral Hendrick's laughter echoed through the main corridor of Naval Amphibious Base Little Creek, cutting through the usual hum of activity like a blade. "Hey, sweetheart!" His voice boomed across the polished floor. "What's your call sign? Mop Lady." The group of senior officers surrounding him erupted in laughter. Commander Hayes smirked. Lieutenant Park crossed his arms with a satisfied grin, and Chief Rodriguez practically doubled over. 40-plus personnel in the corridor. SEALs and training instructors, administrative staff all turned to watch. The woman they were mocking didn't look up. Small, maybe 5'4", wearing the standard maintenance crew uniform that hung loose on her frame, she continued pushing her mop across the floor in steady, methodical strokes. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Nothing about her suggested she was anything other than what she appeared to be, just another invisible worker keeping the base clean. But Master Sergeant Tommy Walsh, standing near the equipment checkout counter, felt ice slide down his spine. He'd seen that stance before. The way she held the mop, grip placement, shoulder angle weight distribution. It was wrong for cleaning. It was right for something else entirely. "Come on, don't be shy," Hendricks pressed, stepping closer. "Everyone here has a call sign. What's yours, squeegee? Floor wax?" More laughter rippled through the crowd. The woman finally paused. She straightened slowly, and for just a moment, less than a second, something flickered across her face. Not anger, not embarrassment. Something colder, something that made Walsh's hand unconsciously move toward his sidearm. Then, it was gone. She lowered her head and returned to mopping. But in the next 20 minutes, everything they thought they knew would be shattered. Walsh watched as the woman's eyes swept the corridor in a pattern he recognized immediately. Left corner, high right corner, low center, mass exits, potential threats. 3-second intervals. Perfect tactical scanning. The kind drilled into operators until it became as automatic as breathing. She wasn't looking at dirt on the floor. She was maintaining situational awareness of every person, every movement, every potential danger in her environment. Commander Victoria Hayes noticed Walsh's attention and misinterpreted it entirely. "Sergeant, you defending the help now." Her voice carried the particular cruelty of someone who'd fought hard for her position and resented anyone she perceived as weak. Maybe she needs a strong man to speak for her. The woman's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Still, she said nothing. Lieutenant James Park pushed off from the wall where he'd been lounging. "Actually, I'm curious now." He gestured toward the weapons rack, visible through the nearby armory window. "Hey you, maintenance lady, since you're cleaning our facilities, maybe you can tell us what those are called." He pointed at 3 rifles mounted in sequence. The woman looked up slowly, her eyes dark brown, unremarkable at first glance, focused on the weapons, with an intensity that made Walsh's breath catch. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. M4 carbine with ACOG optic, M16A4 with standard iron sights, HK416 with EOTech holographic sight. Park's smirk faltered. Those weren't the civilian names. Those were proper military designations. "Lucky guess," Rodriguez sneered, stepping forward. He was a thick man used to using his size to intimidate. "Probably heard some jarhead use those words." As if to punctuate his dismissal, he deliberately kicked over her mop bucket. Gray water spread across the polished floor. What happened next occurred so fast that several witnesses would later argue about the exact sequence. The bucket tipped. A metal clipboard fell from a nearby desk, headed for the spreading water. The woman moved. Her hand shot out and caught the clipboard 6 inches from the water. Not grabbed at it, caught it. Clean pluck from the air, with the kind of hand-eye coordination that required thousands of hours of training. The kind of reflexes that meant the difference between life and death when a grenade rolled into your fighting position. The corridor went quiet for 3 full seconds. Then Hendricks laughed again, but it sounded forced. "Good catch. Maybe you should try out for the softball team." Young Corporal Anderson, part of the maintenance crew, and the only one who'd tried to befriend the quiet woman in the 6 months she'd worked there, stepped forward. "Admiral, sir, with respect, maybe we should—" "Corporal!" Hendricks didn't even look at him. "Did someone ask for your input?" "No, sir." "Then keep your mouth shut." Hendricks turned back to the woman, who had already retrieved a second mop and was cleaning up the spilled water with the same methodical efficiency she brought to everything. "You know what, I'm curious about something. You've got all access clearance. That's unusual for maintenance." She reached into her pocket without pausing in her work and produced her badge. The magnetic strip gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Level 5 clearance. Full base access, including restricted training areas. Park snatched it from her hand, examined it closely. How does a cleaner get level 5? Background check cleared 6 months ago. Her voice remained level. You can verify with security. From the second-floor medical office, Dr. Emily Bradford watched the scene unfold with growing unease. She'd treated this woman twice, once for a scraped knuckle, once for what appeared to be an old shoulder injury acting up. Both times, the woman had demonstrated an unusually high pain tolerance and an encyclopedic knowledge of field medicine. Bradford had noted it in her personal log, but hadn't thought much of it. Now, watching the predatory circle of senior officers, she felt her instinct screaming that something was very wrong with this picture. Hendricks was warming to his game now. He could feel the crowd's attention, feel the weight of his recent promotion. He'd spent 20 years clawing his way up the SEAL command structure, and now he finally had the respect he deserved. This was his base, his command, his moment. Tell you what, sweetheart, since you seem to know so much about our weapons, why don't you explain proper maintenance procedure for that M4 you identified? Shouldn't be too hard for someone with all access clearance, right? The woman set down her mop. She walked to the armory window and pointed at the rifle without touching it. Barrel requires cleaning every 200 to 300 rounds more frequently in desert environments due to sand infiltration. Bolt carrier group should be cleaned and lubricated every 500 rounds minimum. Gas tube requires inspection, but not cleaning unless malfunction occurs. Buffer spring needs replacement every 5,000 rounds, or as indicated by failure to return to battery. Magazine springs are the most common point of failure and should be rotated regularly. Park's face had gone from smug to uncertain. That was word for word from the armorer's manual. Anyone can memorize words, he said, but his voice had lost its edge. You want practical demonstration? She turned to face him directly for the first time. Sure, Hendricks waved at the armory sergeant. Get that M4 out here. Let's see what the help knows about weapon handling. The armory sergeant, a grizzled staff sergeant named Collins, who'd been quietly watching the whole exchange, hesitated. Sir, regulations require. I'm aware of regulations, Sergeant. Get the weapon. Collins retrieved the M4, cleared it with practiced efficiency, and locked the bolt to the rear. He placed it on the counter between them, uncomfortable with the whole situation, but unable to disobey a direct order from an admiral. The woman approached the weapon. Her hands moved before Walsh could even process what he was seeing. Field strip. The rifle came apart in a blur of controlled motion. Upper receiver separated from lower. Bolt carrier group extracted. Firing pin removed. Bolt broken down. Charging handle. Buffer spring. Every component laid out in perfect sequence in 11.7 seconds. Walsh knew that time because he'd unconsciously checked his watch. 11.7 seconds. The SEAL qualification standard was 15 seconds. The Special Forces standard was 13. Only Tier 1 operators consistently broke 12. She reassembled it in 10.2 seconds. The corridor had gone absolutely silent. Even Hendricks had stopped smiling. Lieutenant Commander James Brooks, a SEAL team instructor who just arrived for his shift, stopped dead in the corridor entrance. He'd seen that disassembly speed exactly once before in a classified briefing about Force Recon selection standards. His eyes narrowed as he studied the small woman, who was calmly handing the weapon back to Sergeant Collins. Lucky, Park finally said. Probably practice that party trick at home. Want me to do it blindfolded? She asked the question with no arrogance, no challenge. Pure, factual inquiry. Before anyone could respond, Colonel Marcus Davidson arrived with his inspection team, 3 Pentagon observers doing their quarterly facility review. He took one look at the crowd, the disassembled weapon being reassembled, and the woman in maintenance uniform holding it, and his expression darkened. What exactly is going on here? Just some entertainment, Colonel, Hendricks said smoothly. Maintenance worker here was showing off some skills. Davidson's eyes swept the scene with the practiced assessment of a career officer. He saw the wet floor, the kicked bucket, the circle of smirking senior officers around one small woman. His lips thinned. And this seemed like appropriate use of command time. With respect, sir, we were simply... I didn't ask for your justification, Admiral. I asked what was going on. Davidson's attention fixed on the woman. You, name and position. She met his eyes calmly. Sarah Chen, maintenance crew, 6 months on base. And you have weapons handling certification because... Previous employment, sir. What previous employment? I'd prefer not to say sir. Before we continue with what happened next, if this story of hidden warriors and instant karma gets your blood pumping, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. We bring you real stories of underestimated people who turn the tables in the most spectacular ways possible. And smash that like button, because you know this Admiral is about to learn a lesson he'll never forget. Trust me, what happens in the next few minutes will blow your mind. Now, back to the story, because Admiral Hendricks just made a mistake that's about to cost him everything. Rodriguez stepped forward, smelling blood. Colonel, I think we should verify her credentials. This is starting to smell like stolen valor. Some people like to play dress-up with skills they don't actually have. Sarah's expression didn't change, but Walsh saw her shoulders shift almost imperceptibly into a more balanced stance. Combat ready. She didn't even know she was doing it. Fine, Davidson said. Someone call security. Let's verify these credentials she's so reluctant to discuss. While they waited, Hayes circled closer, her instinct for social dominance kicking in. You know what? I think you're one of those groupies who hangs around bases trying to get attention from real operators. Maybe you dated some enlisted guy who taught you a few tricks, and now you think you're special. Petty Officer Jake Morrison, a fresh SEAL graduate who'd been watching in uncomfortable silence, noticed something the senior officers had missed. The woman's breathing pattern hadn't changed once during the entire confrontation. Box breathing. 4 count in 4 count. Hold, 4 count, out 4 count, hold. The stress management technique they'd spent weeks learning in BUD-S. She was doing it automatically. Security arrived with her full personnel file. The officer in charge, a senior chief named Williams, looked confused as he read it. Ma'am, your file shows all certifications current. Advanced weapons handling, tactical medical combat, driving close quarters, combat, survival, evasion, resistance, escape. This is an operator's qual sheet, not maintenance. All legitimate, Davidson pressed. Yes, sir. All verified through proper channels. Background check cleared by Naval Intelligence. No flags, no issues. But her employment record only goes back 6 months, Rodriguez protested. What was she doing before that? Williams flipped through pages. File doesn't say chief, just shows she was cleared for employment after standard background investigation. That's not standard, Hayes said. You don't get level 5 clearance in this qualification list without a service record. Where's her service record? Not in the file, ma'am. Hendricks saw his opportunity to regain control of the situation. Then I propose a practical test. We've got the combat simulation range available right now. If Miss Chen here is really qualified for all these certifications, she should be able to demonstrate competency, and if she can't, we file a report for falsifying credentials. Brooks stepped forward. Admiral, I'm not sure that's... Are you questioning my judgment, Commander? Brooks met his superior's eyes, calculating risk. Finally, no, sir. Good. Miss Chen, you're invited to the range. Consider it a professional development opportunity. Hendricks' smile had returned. He'd turned this from public humiliation into official business. Clever. Unless you'd like to admit now that your credentials are questionable. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Then quietly, sure. The word hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. The group moved en masse toward the combat training facility, a small army of observers swept up in the promise of spectacle. Word spread through the base with the speed of wildfire. By the time they reached the range, the observation gallery held more than 50 personnel SEALs and training instructors, administrative staff, even some civilian contractors who'd heard something interesting was happening. The rangemaster, a grizzled SEAL senior chief named Kowalski, met them at the entrance. Admiral, we need proper safety briefings if you're bringing in an untrained. She's got qualifications. Hendricks cut him off. Just set up the standard operator assessment. Kowalski looked at Sarah, really looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. He'd been doing this job for 15 years. He knew what a faker looked like. This woman standing calmly in maintenance coveralls while 50 people gathered to watch her fail wasn't faking anything. Yes, sir. What level difficulty? Let's start simple, static target shooting, then we'll escalate if she's actually competent. Hendricks gestured magnanimously. Choose your weapon, Miss Chen. The armory offered the standard training weapons, M4 carbines, M9 pistols, Sig Sauer, P226s. Sarah walked past all of them to the secure locker at the back. May I? Kowalski raised his eyebrows, but nodded. She opened it and removed a Barrett M82A1, 50 caliber, anti-materiel rifle, 29 pounds unloaded. Park actually laughed. You can't be serious. That thing weighs more than you do. She lifted it with proper carry technique, weight distributed perfectly across her frame, and walked to the firing line. The rifle looked absurd in her small hands. Several people in the gallery pulled out phones, anticipating a viral video of someone's humiliation. Walsh closed his eyes briefly. He'd fired a Barrett exactly once in his career. The recoil had bruised his shoulder for a week. Target distance, Sarah asked. 800 meters, Hendricks said generously. It was an impossible shot with a Barrett for anyone except specialized snipers. He was giving her enough rope to hang herself publicly. She loaded a single round, settled into prone position, and looked through the scope. Her breathing slowed, steadied. 10 seconds passed. 15. She was reading the wind-calculating drop, measuring every variable. The shot cracked like thunder. 800 meters downrange, the center of the target exploded. Kowalski checked through the spotting scope. Dead center. Holy cow. Hendricks' jaw worked. Again. Different distance. Make it 1,200 meters. 3 more shots. 3 perfect hits. She adjusted for wind for distance for the slight elevation difference, and every round found its mark. When she stood there, wasn't a trace of strain on her face. No bruising from recoil, no discomfort. Just calm professional efficiency. Hayes's face had gone pale. Where did you serve? She demanded. What unit? I said I'd prefer not to discuss my previous employment. That's not an option anymore, Davidson said. His voice had changed, losing its dismissiveness. He was starting to understand he was watching something significant. Those shots aren't lucky. That's trained skill. High-level trained skill. The base's medical monitoring system had just logged something unusual, a maintenance worker accessing the advanced trauma database with credentials that shouldn't exist. Modern healthcare technology has revolutionized how military bases track medical expertise using biometric scanners and encrypted databases to verify emergency responders. These sophisticated systems can identify qualified personnel in seconds during crisis situations, ensuring the right person with the right skills is always available. The integration of real-time credential verification with medical monitoring has saved countless lives in military facilities worldwide, creating a seamless safety net that catches even the most unexpected qualified responders. Morrison leaned toward Brooks. Sir, her breathing. She's doing box breathing. She hasn't broken pattern once. Brooks nodded slowly. He was putting pieces together, and he didn't like the picture forming. Admiral, I strongly recommend we stop this demonstration and what commander let her walk away without explaining how a maintenance worker shoots like a scout sniper. Hendricks wasn't backing down. His ego was fully engaged now. Miss Chen, pistol transition drill. Let's see if you're as good with a sidearm. Kowalski set up the drill reluctantly. Mozambique pattern. 2 rounds center mass, 1 round head shot on multiple targets under time pressure. The SEAL standard was 3 seconds for 3 targets. Sarah picked up an M9, checked it with the automatic precision of someone who had done the movement 10,000 times, and stepped to the line. Ready? Kowalski called. Set. Go. The shots came so fast they almost blurred together. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3 targets, 3 rounds each, perfect Mozambique pattern. The timer showed 0.9 seconds. Someone in the gallery whispered, That's not possible. Doctor. Bradford had come down from her office drawn by the crowd. She stood in the back of the gallery, watching with growing certainty. She'd seen those hands before when treating Sarah's injuries. Those were hands with old scars and specific patterns. Rope burns on the palms. Knife defense marks on the forearms. A particular callus formation that came from thousands of hours of weapon handling. Bradford had done a residency at Walter Reed. She knew what combat trauma looked like. She knew what operators' hands looked like. Park, desperate to regain some ground, moved forward. All right, shooting drills are one thing. Let's see how you handle CQB. Close quarters battle. Room clearing. Kowalski set up the kill house. The kill house was a mock-up facility with multiple rooms, doors, corners, every scenario that might be encountered in urban warfare. Targets popped up randomly, some hostile, some civilian. The drill tested decision-making under pressure, tactical movement, threat assessment. Even experienced SEALs sometimes failed it. Sarah walked into the entry point. She paused for just a moment, studying the layout, then nodded. Ready? The drill activated. What happened next would be reviewed on camera footage for the next 3 hours by increasingly bewildered tactical instructors. She cleared the facility using techniques that weren't standard military. They were better, more efficient. Movement patterns that minimized exposure while maximizing coverage. She identified and engaged 12 hostile targets while avoiding 8 civilian targets, all in 41 seconds. The current base record was 57 seconds. But it was the technique that made Sergeant First Class Davis, the simulation operator, freeze the footage and replay it 3 times. That's not SEAL CQB. That's not Army. That's not even Delta. Then what is it? Someone asked. Davis shook his head slowly. I've only seen movement like that once in a training video from Quantico. Force Recon. The gallery had gone absolutely quiet. Hayes stepped down from the observation area, her face a mask of confusion and anger, and something that might have been fear. You need to tell us right now who you are. This isn't a game anymore. Before Sarah could respond or not respond, the base PA system crackled to life. Medical Emergency CQB Training Area. Medical Emergency CQB Training Area. All qualified personnel respond. Rodriguez, watching from the armory, allowed himself a small smile. He'd arranged this. A training accident carefully staged, designed to embarrass Sarah one final time. He'd convinced a junior SEAL to fake an injury, something that would require immediate trauma response. She'd fail, be exposed as a fraud, and he'd be vindicated. Everyone rushed to the training area. A young SEAL Petty Officer Collins, Rodriguez's co-conspirator, lay on the ground, clutching his chest, simulating a tension pneumothorax. Perfect symptoms. Difficulty breathing. Uneven chest rise. It was convincing enough that several people looked genuinely alarmed. Sarah knelt beside him in one smooth motion. Her hands moved across his chest, checking, assessing. She looked up at Bradford, who'd arrived with the emergency medical kit. 14-gauge needle. Bradford's eyes widened. That was the correct treatment for tension pneumothorax, but it was an advanced procedure. You know how to perform needle decompression? Yes. Sarah took the needle, located the anatomical landmark second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line, with her fingers. But then she paused. Her eyes narrowed. She pressed her fingers more firmly against Colin's chest, checked his breathing again, looked at his eyes at the slight nervousness there. Stand up, she said quietly. I can't, I need, stand up. Her voice carried sudden command authority that made Collins obey before his brain caught up. He stood, breathing perfectly fine. Bad acting, Sarah said to the room at large. Real pneumothorax presents with tracheal deviation. His trachea is midline. Real patients don't grab their chest symmetrically. They favor the affected side. His pupils should be dilated from pain and hypoxia. They're normal. She stood, handed the needle back to Bradford, and turned to Rodriguez. Did you set this up? The chief's face had gone red. I don't know what You wanted me to perform an invasive procedure on a healthy person so you could charge me with assault. Her voice remained calm, but there was something underneath it now, something cold. Clever, almost worked. Bradford stepped forward. Chief Rodriguez, if this young man isn't actually injured, we need to have a serious conversation about waste of medical resources and the base commander's voice cut through on someone's radio. All personnel be advised, we have incoming VIP. General Robert Thornton, Commanding General, 2nd Marine Division, arriving for surprise inspection. All section heads report to main briefing room in 15 minutes. All section heads, main briefing room, 15 minutes. The crowd began to disperse, the drama interrupted by the sudden need to prepare for a general's inspection. But Hendricks wasn't done. Miss Chen, this conversation isn't over. You'll report to my office at 1500 hours to provide a full accounting of your background and qualifications. She met his eyes. With respect, Admiral, I don't report to you. I'm civilian contractor, not active duty. Then consider it a request, one you'd be wise to honor if you want to keep your job. She nodded once. 1,500 hours, your office. As the crowd dispersed, Walsh approached her cautiously. Ma'am, I don't know who you are, but you might want to have a JAG representative present for that meeting. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for just a moment her expression softened. Thank you, Sergeant. I appreciate the advice. Can I ask you something off the record? You can ask. That tattoo on your shoulder, I saw it when your collar shifted. That's not a random design, is it? Her face went carefully blank. I need to get back to work. She walked away, leaving Walsh standing in the corridor, more certain than ever that he'd just witnessed something significant, something that was about to explode in ways none of them could predict. In his office, Rodriguez was already making calls trying to verify Sarah's background through unofficial channels. He had friends in various units, people who owed him favors. If this woman was a fake, he'd expose her. And if she wasn't? Well, that possibility was starting to seem more likely, and it terrified him more than he wanted to admit. Hayes sat in her office staring at footage of Sarah clearing the kill house. She replayed the movement patterns over and over, the efficiency, the precision. This wasn't someone who'd dated an operator and learned a few tricks. This was someone who'd done this for real, in situations where mistakes meant death. Hayes had spent her entire career fighting to be taken seriously as a female operator. She'd endured hell to earn her trident. And now, here was this quiet maintenance worker who moved like... She couldn't finish the thought. If you're as hooked on this story as I am, make sure you've hit that subscribe button, because things are about to get absolutely insane. The pieces are starting to come together, and what's revealed next will leave you speechless. Drop a comment below with what you think her real background is. Now, let's get back to the moment everything changes. Park sat in the armory methodically cleaning his personal weapon, trying to process what he'd seen. That disassembly speed. He'd been teaching weapons handling for 8 years. He knew the best of the best. That woman had just performed at a level he'd only seen in a handful of operators, people with names that showed up in classified briefings, not on maintenance rosters. At exactly 1,500 hours, Sarah Chen walked into Admiral Hendrix's office. She'd changed into clean maintenance coveralls, her hair still in its simple ponytail. She looked small, unremarkable, completely out of place in the richly appointed command office. Hendrix sat behind his desk, flanked by Hayes and Davidson. Park stood near the door, arms crossed. Rodriguez lurked in the corner, a predator waiting for his moment. Sit, Hendrix ordered. She remained standing. I prefer to stand, sir. That wasn't a request. With respect, Admiral, I'm not active duty military. You can't give me orders. His jaw tightened. This wasn't how he'd expected this meeting to go. Fine, stand. But you will explain your background, your qualifications, and why you're working as maintenance when you clearly have specialized training. I'd prefer not to discuss my previous employment, and I'd prefer not to have a mystery operative working on my base without full disclosure. He leaned forward. Here's what I think. I think you washed out of whatever program you were in. Maybe couldn't handle the pressure, maybe failed the psych eval, and now you're clinging to whatever skills you managed to retain, trying to feel important by impressing people. Something flickered across Sarah's face, just for an instant. Then it was gone. Or maybe, Hayes added, her voice sharp with resentment, you were never actually in any program. Maybe you're a very good actress who learned how to fake competence. We've seen it before. People who study operators learn the lingo, practice the moves, and try to pass themselves off as something they're not. Stolen valor, Rodriguez said from his corner. It's a crime. We could have you arrested. Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, a message from someone labeled only as Papa. 3 words, proud of you. She allowed herself the smallest smile before returning her attention to the officers arrayed against her. Call security, Davidson suggested. Let's get this sorted out officially. Full background investigation, polygraph if necessary. Park pushed off from the wall. I'll make the call. As he reached for the phone, Chief Warrant Officer Kim burst through the door, slightly out of breath. Sir, sorry to interrupt, but I have those search results you requested. This better be good, Kim, Hendrix growled. You asked me to run a deep background check on Sarah Chen. Kim held up a tablet, his face pale. Sir, I found something. Multiple somethings, but there's a problem. What problem? The file is classified, like seriously classified. I only got access because General Thornton authorized it when he heard what was going on. Sir, I need O6 clearance minimum to even open the full record." The room went very, very quiet. Davidson stood. "I have O6 clearance. Let me see that tablet." Kim handed it over reluctantly. Davidson's eyes scanned the screen. His face went through a remarkable series of expressions: confusion, shock, disbelief, and finally something that looked like horror. His hand holding the tablet began to shake. "This can't be right," he whispered. "What?" Hendricks demanded. "What does it say?" Davidson looked up at Sarah, really looked at her, seeing her completely differently now. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I served with your father in Fallujah, Second Battle, November 2004, Master Sergeant Richard Chen. He never told me." He couldn't finish the sentence. "Told you what?" Hayes stepped forward, trying to see the screen. Davidson turned the tablet so they all could see. The classification header was bright red, Top Secret SCI. Below it, a personnel file. And at the top, in bold letters, Chen Sarah, Captain USMC, Force Recon. The room seemed to tilt. "No," Hendricks said flatly. "That's not possible. Force Recon doesn't take—" He caught himself, but the damage was done. "Doesn't take women?" Sarah asked quietly. "They do now, have been for years. You'd know that if you kept up with core developments outside the SEAL community." "Force Recon is one thing," Rodriguez said, his voice desperate now. "That doesn't explain the skill level we saw. That was—" "Keep reading," Davidson said. His face had gone gray. Kim pulled up the next section. Mission history. 73 successful operations. Deployment dates spanning 12 years. Locations that were still classified. A list of commendations that scrolled on for pages. Navy Cross 4, Bronze Star, 6 Purple Heart 7, along with dozens of other medals and citations. And then at the bottom, in stark text, status. Kaya presumed, Helmand Province, August 2019. "She's dead," Park said stupidly. "The file says she's dead." "Presumed KIA," Sarah corrected. "Means they didn't find a body. Means I was alone behind enemy lines for 47 days before I made it to friendly forces. Means the Corps declared me dead because statistically, nobody survives that long in that terrain under those conditions." Hayes had backed up against the wall, her face ashen. You're actually Captain Sarah Chen," Davidson finished. "Call sign?" He looked at her. "The file won't load your call sign. That part's redacted." "It would be," she said. "Call signs for certain operations stay classified." Hendricks had gone very still. His earlier swagger had evaporated. "Ghost unit," he whispered. "Your ghost unit." "I don't know what you're talking about, Admiral." "Don't." His voice was hollow. "I've seen the briefings. There are only 23 ghost unit operators in the entire history of Marine Force Recon. You're... He looked like he might be sick. Rodriguez had slumped against the wall. He'd physically assaulted a superior officer. Not just any officer, a ghost unit operator. His career wasn't just over. He was looking at potential court-martial. Kim pulled up another section. "Sirs, there's more. The reason she's here working maintenance..." He read aloud, "Status change, voluntary retirement, compassionate leave granted. Father Master Sergeant Richard Chen, USMC, retired, suffered traumatic brain injuries February 2020. Subject requested discharge to provide full-time care. Request granted with honors. Current residence, Virginia Beach. Current employment, civilian contractor, Naval Amphibious Base, Little Creek Maintenance Division, cleared for Level 5 access due to previous service and ongoing security clearance." The pieces clicked into place. She wasn't here hiding. She was here because her father needed her. The man who'd raised her, who'd served 25 years in the Corps, who'd been wounded in Fallujah. Davidson's Fallujah was dying, and she'd given up everything to take care of him. "How long?" Davidson asked quietly. "How long does he have?" Sarah's mask cracked just slightly. "Doctors say 6 months, maybe less." "And you've been here 6 months?" "Yes, sir." The silence stretched. Hayes had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Park had turned away, unable to meet Sarah's eyes. Rodriguez looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Hendricks stood slowly. Every ounce of his earlier arrogance had burned away. "Captain Chen? He couldn't find the words. "It's fine, Admiral. It's not fine. Nothing about this is fine. I mocked you. I called you." He couldn't even repeat the words. "You didn't know. That's not an excuse." He straightened. "I owe you an apology, a real one, in front of the same people who witnessed my behavior." "That's not necessary." "Yes, it is," Davidson cut in. "Captain, with respect, it absolutely is necessary. What happened today?" He shook his head. "We need to make this right." A knock at the door interrupted them. A junior officer stuck his head in. "Sorry to interrupt, sirs, but General Thornton requests Admiral Hendricks, Colonel Davidson," and he checked his notes. "Captain Chen report to the commanding officer's briefing room immediately." Sarah's expression shifted to something like resignation. He read the file. "Yes, ma'am, and he's requested your presence specifically." They walked through the corridors of the base, a strange procession. Word had spread, the mysterious maintenance worker was Force Recon, was Ghost Unit was decorated beyond belief. Personnel stopped and stared. Some stood at attention as she passed. Others pulled out phones. By the time they reached the briefing room, a crowd had gathered outside. Walsh was there, along with Morris and Brooks, Dr. Bradford, and dozens of others who'd witnessed the confrontation or heard about it secondhand. General Thornton stood at the head of the briefing table. He was a tall man, late 50s, with the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades in combat zones. When Sarah entered, he came to attention immediately and rendered a full formal salute, hand crisp bearing perfect held, until she returned it. The weight of that gesture hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. A 2-star general had just saluted first. That only happened for one reason: respect that transcended rank. "Captain Chen." Thornton's voice was formal, but warm. "It's an honor to finally meet you in person. Your reputation precedes you, though I wish the circumstances of this meeting were different. Sir." She stood at attention every inch the Marine officer despite the maintenance coveralls. Thornton turned to Hendricks. "Admiral, I've reviewed the incident reports from today. Multiple witnesses' video footage and several very concerned personnel who felt something was deeply wrong about how events unfolded. Would you care to explain?" Hendricks' face had gone pale. "Sir, I had no knowledge of Captain Chen's background or service record. The way she presented, Thornton interrupted, his voice going cold, was as a civilian employee doing her job. A job she took to be near her dying father. A father who served this country for 25 years and earned his retirement through blood and sacrifice. And you decided appropriate conduct was to publicly mock her, question her credentials, and force her into demonstrating capabilities she clearly wished to keep private. Sir, I'm not finished, Admiral." Thornton's command presence filled the room. "Do you know why Captain Chen's call sign is classified? Do you know why Ghost Unit designations are kept in sealed files?" Hendricks shook his head mutely. "Because operators at that level make enemies, real enemies, nation-state level threats. Terrorist organizations that would pay millions for their identities. Captain Chen's face, her real name, her location, all of that was protected information. And today you forced her to expose her capabilities in front of 50-plus personnel, many of whom recorded it on their personal devices. The implications crashed down. Sarah's safety had just been compromised, her father's safety, all because of ego and entertainment. Sir, Sarah spoke up. With respect, the operational security concerns can be managed. I knew the risks when I chose to work here. Today's events were unfortunate, but not catastrophic. That's generous of you, Captain. Thornton studied her. Too generous, but it raises the question why this base you could have taken a position anywhere, gotten a consulting job paying 6 figures. Instead, you're mopping floors for minimum wage. Proximity to Portsmouth Naval Medical Center, she said simply. Best traumatic brain injury specialist in the region. My father gets treatment there twice a week. This base is 12 minutes from the hospital and 15 minutes from our apartment. The math was simple. Davidson spoke up, his voice rough with emotion. Sir, if I may, I served with Master Sergeant Chen in Fallujah. He was my platoon sergeant, saved my life twice in that city. I had no idea his daughter was... He gestured helplessly. I should have known, should have recognized. Nobody was supposed to recognize her colonel. That was the point. Thornton pulled out a chair. Captain, please sit. The rest of you as well. We need to discuss how we move forward from here. They sat around the briefing table, an admiral, a colonel, a two-star general, and a woman in maintenance coveralls who outranked most of them in every way that mattered. What most people don't realize is that special operations veterans like Night Fox often carry specialized military insurance policies that protect their classified identities even after service. These comprehensive coverage plans include identity protection, legal defense for classified matters, and financial security for families during extended deployments. Elite financial planning services designed for Special Forces personnel understand the unique challenges of maintaining civilian lives while carrying top-secret clearances. Investment portfolios for retired operators often include protected assets that can't be traced through normal channels, ensuring their sacrifice doesn't compromise their family's future security. Thornton pulled up a file on the briefing room screen. I received a call approximately 30 minutes ago from JSOC. They're aware of today's incident. They're also aware that Captain Chen's cover, such as it was, has been compromised. They're offering several options. Sir, I don't want to return to active duty, Sarah said immediately. My father... I know, Captain. They know. These options account for that. He clicked through the presentation. Option 1. Full identity protection protocol. New name, new location, new job. Your father would be relocated to a facility near whichever base you choose. All medical care covered. That would disrupt his treatment schedule, Sarah said. His doctors at Portsmouth know his case intimately. Starting over with new providers could cost him months he doesn't have. Understood. Option 2, enhanced security at current location. Armed protective detail, surveillance countermeasures, active threat monitoring. You continue current employment, but with a security footprint. That would defeat the entire purpose of trying to live normally. My father is already struggling with memory and cognition. Adding security teams and protocols would confuse and upset him. Thornton nodded. Option 3, and this is the one I'm personally recommending. You accept a position as a training instructor here at Little Creek. Official title, official rank recognition, appropriate pay grade. You'd work with SEAL candidates and Force Recon students teaching advanced combat techniques. Hours would be flexible, allowing you to maintain your father's care schedule, and your presence would be explained normalized, making you less of a target. Sarah considered this. Teaching would expose me to hundreds of students. Any one of them could compromise operational security. True, but they'd be vetted personnel with security clearances. And frankly, Captain, your operational security is already compromised. The question is how we manage that reality, not whether we can maintain a fiction that's already been shattered. Hayes spoke up, her voice subdued. Sir, if Captain Chen does accept an instructor role, I'd like to request assignment as her liaison officer. I need to make amends for today. Noted, Commander. Captain Chen would have final say on that assignment. Thornton looked at Sarah. You don't have to decide now. Take 24 hours. Talk to your father if his condition allows. But JSOC needs an answer by 1600 hours tomorrow. I understand, sir. Good. Now, regarding today's other participants. His gaze swept the room. Admiral Hendricks, you'll be issuing a formal apology at tomorrow morning's base-wide formation. You'll explain that you were unaware of Captain Chen's background and that your conduct fell below the standards expected of officers. You'll also be enrolling in a mandatory course on respectful leadership. Questions? No, sir. Commander Hayes, same apology, same formation. Additionally, you'll be writing a personal letter to Captain Chen detailing exactly how your behavior contradicted the values you claim to represent. That letter will be reviewed by your commanding officer and placed in your personnel file. Hayes swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Colonel Davidson, you're assigned as Captain Chen's primary point of contact for any needs related to her father's care or her own security concerns. You served with Master Sergeant Chen. You know what he sacrificed. Make sure his daughter has everything she needs. Sir, it would be my honor. Chief Rodriguez. Thornton's voice went cold. You staged a fake medical emergency designed to embarrass and potentially implicate Captain Chen in an assault. You physically grabbed a superior officer. You've been conducting unauthorized background investigations. You're confined to quarters pending formal court-martial proceedings. Security will escort you from this briefing. Rodriguez's face had gone gray. Two security personnel entered and flanked him. As they led him away, he looked back at Sarah. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't know. You didn't care," she said quietly. That was the problem. The door closed behind him. The briefing room felt larger, emptier. Park raised his hand tentatively. "Sir, what about me? I participated in the mocking, the challenges." "Yes, you did, Lieutenant. You also recognized skill when you saw it, even if you didn't want to admit it. You'll be assisting Captain Chen with weapons training classes should she accept the instructor position. Consider it an opportunity to learn from someone who's actually used these skills in combat, not just on a range." "Yes, sir." Thornton stood. "The rest of you, Walsh, Morrison, Brooks, Dr. Bradford, you're here because you either tried to defend Captain Chen or recognized something was wrong. That's noted and appreciated. Dismissed." They filed out, leaving Sarah alone with Thornton. He waited until the door closed, then his formal bearing relaxed slightly. "Off the record, Captain. How are you really doing?" She took a breath. "Honestly, sir, I'm tired. My father has good days and bad days. On good days, he remembers me. On bad days, he thinks I'm my mother, who died when I was 12. The doctors say the injury is progressing. Every week, he loses a little more. I'm sorry. He was always proud of my service. Showed everyone my commendations, even though he wasn't supposed to talk about them. Now, he can't remember most of it. Sometimes he asks when I'm deploying, and I have to remind him I retired. It breaks his heart every time, like hearing it for the first time." Her voice remained steady, but her eyes were bright. "So, no, sir, I don't want to go back to active duty. I don't want security details or relocated identity. I just want the time I have left with him to be as normal as possible." "Then we'll make that happen." Thornton's voice was gentle. "And, Captain, what you're doing now, taking care of your father, that's as important as any mission you ever ran. Don't let anyone tell you different." "Thank you, sir. One more thing, your call sign. The file won't load it for me, but I heard Hendricks mention Ghost Unit and he looked terrified. I've been in this business 35 years, and there are still operations I don't have clearance for. I'm guessing your call sign is connected to some of those." She met his eyes. "I'd prefer not to discuss it, sir." "Fair enough. But if you ever want to talk about anything, my door is open. We take care of our own, even the ones who don't ask for help." She stood and saluted. He returned it crisply. As she turned to leave, he called out, "Captain, for what it's worth, Force Recon made the right choice when they selected you, and the Corps lost a damn fine officer when you retired." "The Corps didn't lose me, sir. I'm still a Marine, just in a different way." Outside the briefing room, a small crowd had gathered. Walsh, Morrison, Brooks, Bradford, and dozens of others. They snapped to attention as she emerged. Some saluted. Others just watched with expressions of awe and respect, and, in a few cases, shame. Young Corporal Anderson pushed forward. "Ma'am, I wanted to say, I'm sorry. I should have defended you more strongly when you stood up when it mattered, Corporal. That takes courage. Don't apologize for doing the right thing." Morrison approached next. "Captain, I'm a new SEAL graduate, still learning. But watching you today, the way you handled everything, that taught me more about professionalism than 6 months of training. Thank you." She nodded. "Being a good operator isn't about how many push-ups you can do, petty officer. It's about keeping your head when everyone around you is losing theirs. Remember that." Dr. Bradford stepped forward. "I reviewed your medical files, with General Thornton's permission, obviously. The injuries you sustained during that 47-day evasion in Helmand." She shook her head. "The fact that you're walking, functioning, working, it's remarkable. If you ever need anything medically or otherwise, please don't hesitate." "I appreciate that, Doctor." Brooks pulled her aside as the crowd began to disperse. "Captain, I need to tell you something. About 3 weeks ago, I saw you in the maintenance break room. You were on the phone speaking what I'm pretty sure was Pashto. I almost reported it as suspicious. Now I realize you probably speak 6 languages, and that was just normal for you." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. 8 languages, actually. And yes, I was talking to an old Afghan translator who helped my unit during several operations. He made it to the States with his family, lives in Richmond now. I check in on him occasionally. See, that's what I mean. You're this incredible combination of lethal operator and genuinely good person. He struggled for words. "It's humbling. Okay if you haven't subscribed yet. Do it right now because you're about to witness one of the most satisfying reveals you'll ever see. This is the moment where everything clicks into place. Share this video with someone who needs to see what real respect looks like. All right, here's what happened next, and I guarantee you won't see this coming. The next morning, at 0800 hours, the entire base formation assembled on the parade ground. Over 800 personnel in dress uniforms, standing in perfect ranks under the early Virginia sun. At the front, Admiral Hendricks stood at a podium, his face carefully composed, but his discomfort evident. Sarah stood off to the side, now wearing proper utilities. Marine Corps camouflage with captain's bars, her uniform crisp, despite having been in storage for over a year. She'd debated wearing it, but Thornton had insisted. Respect earned, deserved recognition. Hendricks cleared his throat. Yesterday I made a serious error in judgment. I publicly mocked and challenged a civilian employee of this base, making assumptions about her character and capabilities based on her position and appearance. I subjected her to unnecessary tests designed to humiliate. I created a hostile work environment and violated every principle of leadership I claim to uphold. His voice was steady, but the words clearly cost him. What I didn't know, what I should have taken the time to learn, was that this woman is Captain Sarah Chen, United States Marine Corps retired, Force Recon operator with 12 years of distinguished service, 73 successful missions, and more combat decorations than most of us will ever see. She took a maintenance position at this base for one reason: to be near her father, a retired Marine who requires specialized medical care. The formation had gone absolutely silent. You could hear the wind moving across the parade ground. Captain Chen had no obligation to prove herself to me or anyone else. Her service record speaks for itself. Yet she endured my mockery with grace and professionalism, demonstrating more leadership in her silence than I showed with all my words. Hendricks looked directly at Sarah. Captain, I offer you my sincere and unreserved apology. My behavior was inexcusable. I failed to live up to the standards expected of officers and gentlemen. I failed to honor the values of respect and dignity that should guide all military service. I am deeply sorry. He stepped back from the podium. Hayes stepped forward, her face pale but determined. Captain Chen, her voice carried across the parade ground. I spent years fighting to be recognized as a capable operator in a male-dominated field. I endured harassment, discrimination, and constant questioning of my abilities. And yesterday, the moment I achieved some authority, I turned around and inflicted that same treatment on another woman. Her voice cracked slightly. I made assumptions based on your appearance and position. I questioned your legitimacy. I was cruel. I did to you exactly what was done to me, and I have no excuse for that hypocrisy. You handled 12 years of combat operations that I can't even imagine, and I treated you like you were nothing. I'm ashamed of myself. I'm sorry. She saluted. Sarah returned it crisply. Hayes held the salute for a long moment before dropping her hand. General Thornton took the podium. This base will learn from yesterday's events. We will implement new protocols for how we treat all personnel, regardless of rank or position. We will remember that every person here, maintenance administration, security, combat forces, plays a vital role in our mission. And we will never again make the mistake of judging someone's worth by their appearance or job title. He gestured for Sarah to join him at the podium. She walked forward and 800 people came to attention simultaneously. The sound of all those boots hitting the ground together echoed like thunder. Captain Chen has agreed to accept a position as a training instructor at this facility. She'll be working with our most advanced candidates, teaching the kind of real-world skills that can only come from actual combat experience. Those of you selected for her courses should consider it the highest honor and the toughest training you'll ever receive. Applause started somewhere in the ranks and spread like wildfire. Within seconds, the entire formation was clapping, then cheering. Some of the senior NCO's men, who'd been deployed a dozen times, seen the worst combat had to offer, had tears on their faces. Sarah stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces, and for the first time in a long time, she felt something other than grief and exhaustion. She felt pride, not in her combat record or her decorations, but in this moment, in the possibility of passing her knowledge to the next generation. "Thank you," she said simply. "I look forward to working with you." 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in the advanced tactics training facility facing 20 of the base's top SEAL candidates. They watched her with a mixture of awe and nervousness. She was a legend. Ghost Unit. The woman who'd survived 47 days alone in hostile territory. The warrior who'd given it all up for family. "Forget everything impressive you've heard about me," she told them. "It doesn't matter. What matters is what you learn in this room. I'm not here to tell you war stories or show off. I'm here to teach you how to survive when everything goes wrong, because it will go wrong. Plans fail, equipment breaks, people die. And when that happens, the only thing standing between you and a body bag is your training." She moved to the center of the mat. Real combat isn't like the movies. It's not clean or heroic. It's chaos and fear and making the best decision you can with incomplete information in 3 seconds or less. Most of you will never face the situations I'm going to describe, and if you're lucky, you never will. But if you do, I want you to walk away. I want you to go home to your families. That's why I'm here. Morrison raised his hand. "Ma'am, how did you survive 47 days alone in Helmand Province?" She considered the question. "I'll tell you, but not as a story of triumph, as a lesson in preparation meeting opportunity." She pulled up a map on the screen. Operation Crimson Eagle, August 15th, 2019. My team inserted into this valley to capture a high-value target. Intel was bad. We walked into an ambush. 3 KIA immediately, 2 wounded. I was the only one mobile. Her voice remained steady, professional, but there was weight to every word. I had 2 choices: try to fight through and retrieve the bodies, which would have resulted in my death with 95% certainty, or evade, survive, and ensure someone made it home to tell their families what happened. I chose survival. She clicked through images of terrain. I spent the first week moving only at night, covering maybe 3 kilometers per night. I ate grubs, insects, whatever I could find. Lost 30 pounds in 4 weeks. Had 3 close calls with Taliban patrols. Avoided them because I'd studied their movement patterns during previous operations. Knowledge saved my life. The room was absolutely silent. Week 3, I developed a serious infection from a shrapnel wound. No antibiotics, no medical supplies. I packed it with honey from a wild hive and cloth from my uniform. Old field medicine trick. It worked. Week 5, I found a dried-up riverbed that led toward friendly territory. Followed it for 18 days. On day 47, I stumbled into a forward operating base manned by Army Rangers who thought I was a ghost. She looked at Morrison. "I survived because of 3 things. 1, I never stopped thinking. Panic kills. 2, I used every skill I'd ever learned, no matter how small or insignificant it seemed. Knowing which insects are edible, how to treat infection with natural antibiotics, how to read terrain and weather, all of that mattered. 3, I had a reason to survive. My father, my team's families. Someone needed to come home and tell the story." She clicked off the screen. "That's the lesson. Skills matter, knowledge matters, but having a reason to fight matters most. Find your reason before you deploy. Hold on to it when everything goes dark. Let it pull you home." The military justice system immediately activated legal protocols for classified personnel exposure. Specialized legal education programs now train JAG officers in handling cases where classified identities are compromised in public settings. These advanced courses cover everything from operational security breaches to unauthorized disclosure of special operations personnel. Legal protection services for elite military members include rapid response teams that can secure compromised identities within hours, working with military intelligence to assess damage and implement countermeasures. Professional development programs teach command staff how to avoid exactly what Admiral Hendricks just did: catastrophic security violations through ignorance. The weeks turned into months. Sarah settled into her new role, teaching advanced combat techniques, survival skills, and tactical decision-making. Her students were the best of the best, and she pushed them harder than any instructor they'd ever encountered. Hayes, true to her word, served as Sarah's liaison officer. The relationship was awkward at first, weighted with guilt and resentment, but gradually evolved into something like mutual respect. Hayes learned humility. Sarah learned to accept help. Park became her assistant instructor, and to his surprise, he learned more in 3 months working with her than in 8 years teaching on his own. She had insights born of real combat experience, the kind of knowledge you couldn't get from manuals or simulations. Walsh visited often, sharing stories about operations he'd been part of, comparing notes with someone who'd been there, done that at the highest possible level. He told her about the night in Fallujah, when a force recon operator codenamed Night Fox had pulled his team out of an impossible situation. She listened, but never confirmed or denied. Rodriguez faced court-martial and received a dishonorable discharge. The verdict was read in the same briefing room where Sarah's identity had been revealed. She attended not out of vindictiveness, but because she wanted him to see that actions had consequences. He apologized again. She accepted it, then watched him escorted out in civilian clothes, his career over. Davidson became a constant presence, checking in weekly about her father's care, ensuring every medical need was met. He brought photos from Fallujah, from the deployment where he'd served with Master Sergeant Chen. Sarah's father, on his good days, would look at the photos and remember. On those days, his face would light up with the joy of recollection, and Sarah would sit beside him for hours listening to stories she'd heard 100 times, but never tired of hearing. Dr. Bradford coordinated with Portsmouth Naval Medical Center to provide the absolute best care available. She personally reviewed every treatment plan, every medication adjustment, every therapy session. Sarah tried to thank her. Bradford waved it off. "Your father served 25 years. This is the least we can do." Morrison became one of Sarah's most dedicated students. He absorbed every lesson, asked intelligent questions, and showed the kind of dedication that reminded her why she'd agreed to teach in the first place. When he graduated advanced training and received his assignment to a SEAL team, he asked her to pin on his new insignia. She did, feeling a surge of pride that surprised her with its intensity. 5 months after the confrontation in the corridor, Sarah was leaving the training facility late in the evening when her encrypted phone vibrated. She pulled it out, saw the number, and felt her stomach tighten. Unknown operator, Priority Alpha. She stepped into an empty office and answered. "This is Chen." The voice was distorted, digitally altered. "Night Fox. This is Phantom Actual. We know you're retired. We know you made promises to your family, but we have a situation requiring Ghost Unit expertise. I'm not available for operations. 3 operators MIA, hostile territory, 72-hour window. You're the closest asset with required skill set." A pause. "We're not ordering. We're asking." Sarah closed her eyes. "What's the situation?" "Intel suggests they're held in a compound you infiltrated during Operation Cerberus 2017. You know that terrain. You know their tactics. Without you, extraction probability is 19%. With you?" Another pause. 68%. She thought of her father. His good days were becoming less frequent. The doctors had revised their estimate down to 3 months, maybe 4. Every moment with him was precious. But 3 operators. Someone's sons, daughters, spouses. People who'd served, sacrificed, who deserved to come home. "How long do I have to decide?" "Wheels up in 4 hours. Volunteer only. Your choice, Captain." She disconnected the call and stood in the darkening office for a long moment. Through the window, she could see the base's lights coming on, illuminating the parade ground where she'd received her public apology, the training facilities where she taught the next generation, the corridor where this had all begun. Her phone buzzed again. A text from her father's care facility. "Your father is asking for you. He's having a good evening. Remembers everything." She looked at both messages, the call to war and the call to family. The impossible choice between duty and love. The decision that had no right answer, only the answer she could live with. If this story gave you chills, we've got dozens more like it on the channel. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss these incredible true stories. And here's a question for you. What would you do if you discovered someone you disrespected was actually a legendary hero? Comment below. Now, for the final twist, you won't believe. Sarah pulled up her father's contact, sent him a text. "Papa, I'm on my way. Want to hear about your deployment stories tonight?" His response came almost immediately. "Yes, and you can tell me about yours. My memory is sharp today. I remember everything you did, everything you became. I am so proud, Xiao Bao." The nickname he'd called her since childhood, Little Treasure. Her eyes burned. She typed out another message, this one to Phantom Actual. "Negative on the operation, but I can provide tactical briefing on the compound, updated intelligence from my 17 operation. and recommend 2 operators from my current student roster who can execute the mission profile, available for consult immediately. The response came 30 seconds later. Understood. Briefing room coordinates sent. Thank you, Night Fox. Your information will save lives. She locked her phone and walked out of the office. Down the corridor, the same corridor where this had begun, where she'd been mocked and challenged and forced to reveal herself. But now she walked it as herself, Captain Sarah Chen, Force Recon Ghost Unit Instructor. Daughter, no longer hiding, no longer needing to. Walsh was waiting near the exit as if he'd known she'd be working late. Everything all right, Captain? Yes, Sergeant, everything's fine. I'm headed to Portsmouth to see my father. Good. Those moments are important. More important than anything else. She paused. Sergeant, can I ask you something? That night in Fallujah, when Night Fox pulled your team out, what did you learn from it? He thought for a moment. That the best operators aren't the loudest ones. The ones who save lives, who make the difference, they're usually the quiet ones. The ones nobody sees coming. He smiled. Took me years to understand that, but I understand it now. Thank you, Sergeant. She drove to Portsmouth Naval Medical Center, took the elevator to the 4th floor, walked down the familiar hallway to her father's room. He was sitting up in bed, looking out the window at the evening sky. When she entered, his face lit up with full recognition. There's my girl, my warrior daughter. She sat beside him, took his hand. Hi, Papa. I had a clear day today. Remembered everything. Your mother, your childhood, your service. Everything. His eyes were bright sharp, in a way they hadn't been for weeks. The nurses told me you've been teaching at Little Creek, that they know who you are now. Yes, it's been good, different, but good. You gave up so much to take care of me. Papa, no, let me say this, while I remember, while I can. He squeezed her hand. You were the best of us. Better than me, better than any Marine I ever served with. And you walked away from all of it to be here, to be with me. Family first. You taught me that. I also taught you about duty, about service, about the weight of capability. He looked at her intently. There will be times when they call, when they need what only you can provide. And I want you to know, if you need to answer that call, I understand. Your mother would understand. We raised you to be a warrior. Don't stop being one just because you're afraid of losing me. I'm not afraid of losing you, Papa. I'm afraid of not being here when... I know, but Sarah, listen to me. Real warriors know when to fight and when to hold position. You're exactly where you need to be, teaching, passing on knowledge, being with family. That's not retreat. That's victory. They sat together as the sun set, talking about Fallujah and Helmand, about her mother and his service, about the choices they had made and the prices they had paid. He told her stories from his deployment, filling in details he'd never shared before. She told him about operations she'd never discussed, things that were probably still classified, but that she needed him to know. I want you to remember something, he said as the evening wore on. Real warriors don't advertise. They don't need parades or recognition. They do the job because it needs doing, and then they go home to the people they love. You've done the job, Xiao Bao. You've earned your peace. Don't let anyone take that from you. I won't, Papa. Promise me. When I'm gone, and it won't be long now, we both know that, promise me you'll live. Not just survive, live, laugh, love, find joy. You've earned that. I promise. He smiled satisfied and settled back into his pillows. Within minutes, he was asleep, his breathing steady and peaceful. Sarah sat with him through the night, holding his hand, watching his chest rise and fall, memorizing every detail of his face. 2 weeks later, Master Sergeant Richard Chen, USMC retired, passed away peacefully in his sleep, with his daughter beside him. The funeral was held at Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. General Thornton delivered the eulogy. Hundreds of Marines attended, people who'd served with him, people he'd trained, people whose lives he'd touched. Sarah stood at graveside in her dress blues, the uniform she hadn't worn since retirement, accepting the folded flag with steady hands. She didn't cry. Not during the service. Marines didn't cry in public. But afterward, standing alone at the grave as the sun set over the white headstones, she let the tears come. Not tears of regret or anger. Tears of gratitude for the time they'd had, for the lessons he'd taught, for the man he'd been. Walsh found her there an hour later. He didn't say anything, just stood beside her in silent support. Eventually, others joined Morrison, Brooks, Bradford, even Hayes and Park. A small honor guard of people who'd learned what she'd sacrificed, what she'd given up, and wanted her to know she wasn't alone. "He was proud of you," Walsh finally said. "Anyone could see that." "I hope so. I know so. I visited him once about a month ago. He talked about you for 2 hours straight, about how you were the best Marine he'd ever known, how you embodied everything the Corps was supposed to be." She managed a small smile. "Thank you for telling me that." They stood together as darkness fell, and eventually one by one they left until only Sarah remained. She placed her hand on the headstone cold marble under her palm. "Semper Fi Papa, until we meet again." She turned and walked away, leaving behind the warrior's grave, but carrying forward the warrior's spirit. Her phone buzzed another message from Phantom Actual, another request for consultation, another chance to serve in the way she once had. This time, she considered it differently. Not as a betrayal of her promise to her father, but as a fulfillment of it. He'd told her to live. Living meant using her capabilities, sharing her knowledge, making a difference in whatever way she could. She typed a response, "Available for tactical consultation, remote only, will provide detailed briefing on request." The answer came immediately. "Understood. Thank you, Night Fox. Your insight has saved 12 operators in the last 4 months. We're grateful." 12 lives, 12 people who went home to their families because she'd shared what she knew. That was worth something. That mattered. Sarah drove back to her apartment, larger now, no longer needing to be 15 minutes from the hospital. She'd been offered housing on base, but she'd declined. She needed space to breathe, to grieve, to figure out who she was, now that her father was gone and her identity was known. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. She made tea, sat on the balcony overlooking Virginia Beach, and watched the lights of the base in the distance. Tomorrow, she'd go back to teaching. She'd continue shaping the next generation of operators. She'd provide consultation to JSOC when they needed her expertise. But tonight she just sat and remembered. Remembered deployments and firefights. Remembered coming home to her father's smile. Remembered the moment in that corridor when everything changed, when Admiral Hendricks asked her call sign and set in motion events that would reshape her life. Her encrypted phone buzzed one more time. Not Phantom Actual, a different number one she hadn't seen in 4 years. The message was brief. "Night Fox. Operation Broken Arrow requires Ghost Unit activation. 3 operators confirmed KIA. Mission parameters require your specific skill set. This is not consultation request. This is recall to active duty under Executive Order 732 Alpha. Report to Andrews Air Force Base 0600 hours date +2. Failure to report will be considered desertion under UCMJ Article 85. Acknowledge receipt." Sarah stared at the message for a full minute. Executive Order 732 Alpha. She knew what that meant. Compulsory reactivation for personnel with critical skill sets during national security emergencies. It had only been invoked 11 times in military history. This was number 12. She could fight it, get lawyers involved, argue that her retirement was permanent, that she'd fulfilled her obligation. But 3 operators were dead, and the mission parameters required Ghost Unit skills. That meant something had gone catastrophically wrong, something that threatened national security at the highest level. She thought about her father's words. Real warriors know when to fight and when to hold position. She thought about the promise she'd made to live, to find peace. But she also thought about the 12 operators whose lives she'd saved through consultation, the students she'd trained, the knowledge she possessed that could make the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Her fingers hovered over the phone. She could acknowledge. She could report. She could be Night Fox one more time, or she could refuse. Face court-martial. Stand on principle. Choose the life she'd built over the life she'd left behind. The phone buzzed again. Another message, this one from General Thornton. "Captain Chen, I've been briefed on the recall order. I want you to know you have options. JAG stands ready to fight this if you want. Your service has been extraordinary. You've earned your retirement. Whatever you decide, the Corps stands with you." A third message from Morrison. "Ma'am, I don't know what's happening, but the base is on alert. Whatever you need, I'm here." A fourth from Walsh. "Night Fox rumors are flying. If they're calling you back, it's bad. Real bad. But you don't owe them anything more. You've given enough. She set the phone down and walked to her closet. In the back behind civilian clothes and teaching uniforms was a sealed duffel bag. She'd packed it the day she retired, telling herself she'd never open it again. Inside were her combat utilities, her gear, her tools of war, everything she'd need if she ever went back. Her hand touched the zipper, paused, pulled away. She went back to the balcony, picked up her phone, and typed a response to the recall order. Message received and understood. However, I am formally requesting replacement by alternate ghost unit operator. I have fulfilled 12 years active duty, earned honorable retirement, and completed my service obligation. I am willing to provide complete tactical briefing and operational support remotely, but I am not available for field deployment. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came within 30 seconds. Request denied. No alternate operators available with required skill set for this specific mission. Threat level classified above top secret. Executive Order 732 Alpha allows no exceptions. You have 48 hours to report. Non-compliance will result in federal arrest warrant. Sarah closed her eyes. This was it. The moment her father had warned her about. The call that couldn't be refused. The duty that never really ended. She thought about running. She had the skills. She could disappear, become someone else, live off the grid. But that would mean betraying everything she'd stood for, everything her father had taught her. Marines didn't run. Warriors didn't hide. She opened her eyes and looked out at the base lights one more time. Tomorrow morning, she'd have to make a choice. But tonight she still had 47 hours and 23 minutes of freedom. Her phone rang, not a text this time, an actual call. Well, the caller ID showed blocked. She answered. Chen, Captain. The voice was male, older, with the particular gravitas that came from decades of command. This is Admiral James Patterson, JSOC Commander. I'm the one who authorized your recall. Sir, I know what I'm asking. I've read your full file, including the classified portions. I know about Hellman Province. I know about your father. I know you've earned your retirement 10 times over. Then why recall me, sir? Because 3 days ago, a joint task force attempted to extract a high-value intelligence asset from a compound in northern Syria. The mission went bad. 3 operators killed 2 wounded assets still trapped. We have 72 hours before the asset is moved to a location we can't reach. After that, the intelligence they possess falls into hostile hands, and we're looking at catastrophic loss of operational security across the entire Middle East theater. Sarah's tactical mind was already processing. What makes this mission require Ghost Unit specifically? The compound is a converted monastery built into a cliff face. 3 approaches, all heavily defended. Standard assault would result in 90% casualty rate. But in 2017, during Operation Cerberus, you infiltrated that exact compound, using a route no one else even knew existed. You got in, eliminated 6 targets, extracted critical intelligence, and got out without being detected. The only other person who knew that route was your spotter, and he was KIA in Afghanistan in 2020. She remembered the monastery, the cliff face, the impossible infiltration that had taken her 3 days of preparation and 16 hours of climbing. That route requires specific physical parameters: small frame, high strength to weight ratio, advanced climbing skills. There are other operators who, we've screened every active Ghost Unit and Force Recon operator. No one fits the physical profile and has the climbing certification. You're 5'4", 125 pounds. The route you used has sections where larger operators physically cannot fit. We've confirmed this through reconnaissance. Sir, I haven't done technical climbing in over a year. We have a facility standing by, 48 hours of refresher training with the best climbing instructors in the military, then insertion in 72 hours. She was quiet for a long moment. What's the asset's identity? Classified, unless you accept the mission. Then I can't make an informed decision. Patterson paused. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy. The asset is Captain James Park. Sarah's breath caught. Park. Lieutenant Park, who'd mocked her in that corridor, who'd challenged her weapon skills, who'd become her assistant instructor and learned humility and skill in equal measure, who'd deployed to Syria 3 months ago with a specialized task force. He's alive. For now, wounded but mobile. He's holding position in the monastery's lower levels with the extracted intelligence, but hostile forces know he's there. They're bringing in specialized breach teams. Our window is closing. Sir, you're telling me one of my students is trapped and you need me to extract him using a route only I know. Yes, Captain. That's exactly what I'm telling you. She closed her eyes, saw Park's face the day of his graduation from her advanced course, the pride in his expression, the gratitude. He'd told her she'd made him a better operator, a better man, and now he was trapped in a Syrian monastery waiting for rescue that might never come. If I do this, she said slowly, I want guarantees. I extract Park, deliver him and the intelligence safely, and my recall is complete. I return to retired status with no further obligation. You have my word. One mission, then you're done. I want that in writing, sir. Official orders specifying one-time reactivation with return to retirement upon mission completion. You'll have it within the hour. And I want my choice of team. I don't work with operators I don't know. Captain, the team is already assembled. Then disassemble it, sir. I'll work with Morrison Walsh if he's cleared for the mission, and 2 others of my choosing from my current student roster. Or I don't go. Patterson was silent for 10 seconds. Done. Submit your roster within 6 hours. But Captain Morrison is a good operator, but he's young. Green. Are you sure? He's ready, sir. I trained him. I know what he can do. All right. 6 hours for roster submission. Briefing at Andrews in 48 hours. And Captain. Thank you. Park is a good man. He deserves a chance. Yes, sir. He does. The call ended. Sarah sat in the darkness of her balcony, feeling the weight of the decision settling onto her shoulders like old familiar armor. She'd tried to walk away. She'd done everything right, retired honorably, taken care of her father, built a new life. But the warrior's path had one more curve, one more mission, one more impossible task. She pulled out her phone and sent messages to Morrison Walsh and 2 of her top students, a female force recon operator named Chen. No relation, and a SEAL named Rodriguez, also no relation to the disgraced chief. The messages were identical. This is Captain Chen. I need you for a classified operation. High risk, volunteer only. If you're interested, reply within 1 hour. No questions until briefing. The responses came within minutes. All 4 accepted without hesitation. Sarah opened her laptop and began writing the tactical plan. The monastery. The cliff face. The impossible infiltration route that she'd thought she'd never use again. She pulled up satellite imagery, recent reconnaissance photos, intelligence reports. She studied the terrain with the intensity she'd brought to every mission, looking for changes, updates, new threats. By sunrise, she had a complete operational plan, infiltration route timeline, contingencies, extraction scenarios. She sent it to Patterson with a note, mission viable with estimated 73% success probability. Recommend insertion during new moon phase in 6 days for optimal darkness. Team will require specialized equipment list attached. The response came 20 minutes later. Plan approved, new moon insertion confirmed, equipment requisition authorized, report to Andrews 0600 tomorrow for team briefing and climb refresher. Godspeed, Night Fox. She closed her laptop and finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of what she'd agreed to. One more mission. One more impossible task. One more chance to prove that Ghost Unit operators never left anyone behind. Her phone buzzed. A text from Brooks. Heard you got recalled. And want to talk? She replied. Not much to say. Duty called. I answered. That's what Marines do. Your father would be proud. She hoped so. She really, really hoped so. The next morning, Sarah arrived at Andrews Air Force Base at 0500 an hour early. She'd packed her duffel, said goodbye to her apartment, and left instructions with her lawyer about what to do with her belongings if she didn't come back. The briefing room was deep in the classified section of the base. When she entered Morrison Walsh, Chen and Rodriguez were already there, along with General Thornton, Admiral Patterson, and a room full of intelligence analysts and mission planners. Morrison stood when she entered. Ma'am, at ease, petty officer. We're all equals on this mission. She set down her gear and faced the room. All right, let's get started. I assume you've all signed the non-disclosure agreements and been briefed on the security classification. Nods all around. Good. Then here's the situation. She pulled up the satellite imagery of the monastery. This is our target. Former monastery now, a fortified compound used by a hostile force I can't name in this briefing. 3 days ago, a joint task force attempted extraction of a high-value asset. Lieutenant James Park, currently trapped in the lower levels with critical intelligence. She saw the shock on Morrison's face. Park had been their instructor, their mentor. Now, he was the mission objective. Standard assault is suicide. The compound has 3 approaches, all heavily defended, but there's a 4th route. She zoomed in on the cliff face. Here, a climbing route I used in 2017. It's technical, it's dangerous, and it requires a very specific skill set. That's why we're here. Walsh studied the image. Ma'am, that's a vertical climb of what, 800 feet? 847 feet. Sergeant, with 3 sections that overhang and 1 traverse, that's 53 feet with no protection. We'll be climbing at night with combat loads under time pressure. Chen, the female force recon operator, leaned forward. What's the weather window? New moon in 6 days gives us optimal darkness, but there's a storm system moving in that could hit our insertion window. We have a 12-hour window to make the climb, infiltrate Extract Park, and get back down before sunrise. Rodriguez the SEAL asked the critical question. What if we don't make the time window? Then we're trapped inside a hostile compound at sunrise with every enemy in the region looking for us. Our extraction bird leaves at 6:30, regardless of whether we're on it. Miss that window, and we're on our own for escape and evasion across 70 miles of hostile territory. The room went quiet. Patterson stood. I won't lie to you. This mission has the highest risk profile of any operation I've authorized in my career. But Lieutenant Park is running out of time, and the intelligence he's protecting could save hundreds of lives. Captain Chen has the tactical plan. You have 6 days to train, and you all have one more chance to walk away right now, no questions asked. No one moved. Outstanding. Patterson nodded to Sarah. Captain, they're yours. For the next 6 days, Sarah pushed her team harder than she'd pushed anyone in her life. They climbed until their fingers bled, until their muscles screamed, until the movements became automatic. She drilled them on the monastery's layout, on contingency plans, on what to do if she was killed, and they had to complete the mission without her. On the 4th day, Morrison pulled her aside after a particularly brutal training session. Ma'am, can I ask you something? Of course. Why me? I'm the youngest, least experienced member of this team. Why did you choose me? She looked at him steadily. Because when I was teaching you, I watched you fail 12 times on the advanced tactical course. And every single time you got back up, figured out what went wrong, and tried again with a better approach. That's what this mission needs. Not the most experienced operator, the one who won't quit when it all goes wrong. And it will go wrong, Morrison. It always does. I won't let you down, ma'am. I know you won't. That's why you're here. On the 6th day, they loaded onto a C-130 for the flight to the staging area. As the plane lifted off, Sarah looked at her team, Morrison's youthful determination, Walsh's steady professionalism, Chen's quiet competence, Rodriguez's focused intensity. These were her people now. Her responsibility, her mission. The flight took 8 hours. They landed at a forward operating base in a location Sarah wasn't cleared to know, transferred to helicopters, and inserted under cover of darkness 5 miles from the monastery. The climb to the infiltration point took 3 hours through rocky terrain that seemed designed to break ankles. At 02:30 hours, they reached the base of the cliff face. Sarah looked up at the vertical rock stretching into darkness above them, and for just a moment, she felt doubt. It had been so long. What if she'd lost the edge? What if her skills had dulled? Then she remembered Park's face in that corridor, his mockery, his apology, his growth into a man worth saving. She clipped into the rope, checked her gear one final time, and began to climb. The first 300 feet went smoothly. The rock was solid, the handholds where she remembered them. Behind her, she could hear her team climbing steadily. Their breathing controlled their movements efficient. Then they reached the first overhang. Here the rock jutted out at a 15-degree angle, requiring climbers to essentially hang upside down while moving laterally. In daylight with modern equipment, it would be challenging. At night in full combat gear, it was nearly impossible. Hold position, she whispered into her radio. I'm going across first to set the traverse line. She swung out onto the overhang, feeling her core engage her fingers, finding purchase on holds that were sometimes just rough patches of rock, feet smearing against the vertical surface. arms burning with the strain of supporting her full body weight plus gear at an impossible angle. Halfway across, her right hand slipped. For one heart-stopping moment, she dangled by 3 points of contact combat gear, pulling her backward toward a fatal fall. Then training took over. She pivoted, found a new hold, continued the traverse with mechanical precision. 2 minutes later, she reached the far side and secured the safety line. Traverse line set. Come across one at a time. Morrison went first, moving with the controlled aggression she'd taught him. He made it across in 90 seconds, breathing hard but solid. Chen crossed next, her movements so smooth and controlled that she barely disturbed the rope. Natural talent meeting expert training. Walsh followed, his experience showing in how he managed his energy, never over-gripping, never wasting movement. Rodriguez came last, and 20 feet into the traverse, his foot slipped. He swung wide, pendulum-like, slamming into the rock face. Sarah heard his grunt of pain through the radio, but he maintained his grip, repositioned, and completed the traverse with determination that would have made her proud if there had been time for pride. They continued climbing, 400 feet, 500, 600, each pitch harder than the last, each movement consuming precious time and energy. At 700 feet, they reached the crux, the hardest section of the entire climb. A 53-foot horizontal traverse on a ledge so narrow that climbers had to sidle along it with their backs to a vertical drop and their faces inches from rock. No safety line possible. One slip meant death. Sarah went first again, moving with the precision of someone who'd done this before and knew exactly how close to disaster she was operating. 30 feet across, 40, 50. Her right foot found the small platform that marked the end of the traverse, and she exhaled fully for the first time in minutes. Traverse complete. Come across one at a time. Take your time. Do not rush. If you slip, you die, and the mission fails. Morrison came across. His youth showed in his speed too fast, but he had the grip strength to maintain control. He made it. Chen crossed with calculated precision, testing each foot placement before committing her weight. Walsh moved like he was walking on a sidewalk, his experience translating into calm that verged on casual. Rodriguez started across. 20 feet and a rock chip broke loose under his foot. He froze, pressed flat against the wall, breathing in controlled bursts. Sarah watched, unable to help, knowing that any attempt to assist could cause them both to fall. "Rodriguez," she said quietly into the radio. "You're okay. Reset your foot position. Find the hold 6 inches to your left." He moved slowly, found the hold, continued. 40 feet across, he made the mistake of looking down. She saw it in his body language, the sudden tension, the slight backward lean. "Eyes on the rock," she commanded. "Nothing exists except the next foot placement. Move." He moved. 50 feet, 52, 53. He reached the platform, and Sarah pulled him the final few inches onto solid ground. "Good," she said simply. "Now we climb." The final 147 feet were technical but manageable. At 04:15 hours, they reached the cave entrance that marked the infiltration point. They'd made the climb in 1 hour and 45 minutes, 30 minutes ahead of schedule. Sarah checked her weapon, confirmed everyone was combat ready, and led them into the monastery's hidden passages. The intelligence briefing had been accurate. The passages were empty, forgotten by the current occupants who didn't know this route existed. They moved through darkness using night vision, following a mental map Sarah had memorized 8 years ago. Every turn was where she remembered it. Every passage led exactly where it should, until they reached the chamber that should have connected to the lower levels and found it collapsed. Rockfall, recent. Completely blocking their route. Sarah studied the rubble, calculating. The mission window was closing. They had 6 hours until sunrise. Going back and finding another route would consume at least 3 hours they didn't have. "Ma'am." Morrison looked at her, waiting for orders. She examined the edges of the collapse, looking for gaps, weak points. There, a narrow space at the top where some rocks hadn't quite settled, maybe 18 inches wide, maybe. "I'm going through," she said. "If I can confirm the passage is clear on the other side, we'll widen this gap and continue. If not, we abort and try an alternate route. Captain, that gap is barely—" "I know, Sergeant, but I'm the only one small enough to fit. Hold position." She stripped off her combat vest, her gear, everything except her weapons and radio. Even thin, even small, the gap looked impossible. But Park was trapped on the other side, and operators didn't leave operators behind. She squeezed into the gap, feeling sharp rock edges scrape her shoulders, her ribs, her hips. She exhaled completely, making herself as flat as possible, and inched forward. Rock pressed against her chest, her back, her skull. For one claustrophobic moment, she was stuck, unable to move forward or back, just trapped in stone with the weight of the mountain above her. Then her fingers found purchase on the far side. She pulled, felt something give, pulled harder. The rock scraped skin from her shoulders, her back, but she was moving forward. Her head emerged, her shoulders, her torso. She fell through onto the far side, landing hard on ancient stone, breathing in gasps. "Through," she reported into the radio. "Passage continues. We can widen the gap from this side. Stand by." She used explosive charges carefully placed and shaped to create maximum effect with minimum noise. The explosion was muffle controlled. The gap widened to 30 inches. Her team came through one by one, and they continued into the monastery's depths. At 05:07 hours, they reached the lower level where Park was holding position. Sarah used the agreed-upon recognition signal: 3 taps, pause, 2 taps. The response came immediately. 2 taps, pause, 3 taps. She opened the concealed door and found Park huddled in a maintenance alcove leg, wrapped in makeshift bandages, rifle covering the approach, eyes hollowed with exhaustion and pain. "Captain Chen," he sounded like he didn't believe what he was seeing. "They said you might come, but I didn't think... you're retired, I'm here, Lieutenant. Can you walk?" "Yes, ma'am. Legs bad but mobile. I've got the intelligence, everything they sent us to get." He held up a small encrypted drive. 12 operators died for this. I wasn't going to let it fall into the wrong hands. "Good man, we're leaving, now." "Can you climb?" His face went pale. "The cliff wrote, ma'am, with this leg." "I didn't ask if it would be easy. I asked if you can do it." He met her eyes and saw the same determination she'd shown in that corridor 18 months ago. "Yes, ma'am, I can do it." They moved through the monastery's passages, Park limping but keeping pace, adrenaline and training overriding pain. They reached the cave entrance as the sky was beginning to lighten. 05:47 hours. 43 minutes until their extraction window closed. "We have to move faster," Sarah said. "The climb took us 1 hour 45 on the way up. We have 43 minutes to get down. That means controlled descent, fast rappel wherever possible, and absolutely no mistakes." They rigged the rope secured Park in a special harness that would allow them to manage his descent, and began dropping down the cliff face at speeds that would have horrified any safety-conscious climbing instructor. 200 feet down, the dawn light revealed their position to a hostile patrol. Gunfire erupted from below. Rounds sparked off rock 5 feet from Sarah's position. "Incoming fire!" Walsh shouted. "We're exposed." Sarah made the calculation in a half a second. They couldn't go back up. They couldn't stay here. They had to go down directly into gunfire and do it faster than their enemies could aim. "Combat descent," she ordered. Morris and Chen suppressing fire. Walsh Rodriguez drop with Park. "I'm going first to clear the landing zone." She kicked off the rock face and rappelled in bounding leaps 20 feet at a time, while Morrison and Chen provided covering fire from above. Rounds whipped past her. One creased her thigh, she barely felt it. Another tore through her uniform, near her shoulder, missing flesh by inches. She hit the ground, rolled, came up with her weapon raised, and engaged the hostile patrol. 3 targets, 3 rounds, 3 down. Training and combat experience translating into mechanical precision. LZ clear drop now. Her team came down in controlled falls, bringing Park with them. They hit the ground, formed a defensive perimeter, and began moving toward the extraction point at a tactical run. Park supported between Rodriguez and Walsh, Sarah on point. Morrison and Chen providing rear security. The extraction helicopter was inbound. They could hear the rotors in the distance. But between them and the landing zone were 300 meters of open ground and an unknown number of hostile forces alerted by the gunfire. "Captain," Walsh said over the radio, "we've got movement left flank, at least 2 squads converging on our position." "Keep moving. Morris and Chen prepare to break contact. I'll hold them while you get Park to the bird." "Ma'am, no." Morrison started. "That's an order, petty officer. Get Park on that helicopter. The intelligence he's carrying is more important than any of our lives. Move." They moved. Sarah positioned herself behind a boulder formation, with clear sightlines on the approaching hostiles, and began engaging targets with methodical precision. 1, 2, 3, 4. Suppressing fire to keep them from flanking her team. The helicopter touched down. She saw her team load. Park saw the pilot gesturing frantically 30 seconds until they had to lift off or risk taking fire that would down the bird. She fired her last magazine, dropped the empty weapon, pulled her sidearm, and sprinted for the helicopter. Rounds kicked up dirt behind her. Someone was shouting in Arabic close enough that she could hear them over the rotor wash. 20 meters. 15. 10. 5. She dove through the helicopter door as it lifted off Walsh and Morrison, pulling her inside. Rounds pinged off the armored hull as they climbed, but they were airborne, clear safe. Sarah lay on the deck, breathing hard, adrenaline draining away to leave exhaustion in its place. Park was secured in a seat, medics working on his leg. Her team was intact, scratch bleeding, exhausted, but alive. "Mission complete," she said into her radio. "Assets secure, intelligence recovered, no friendly KIA. Patterson's voice came back. "Outstanding work, Night Fox. Welcome home." The flight back to friendly territory took 4 hours. Sarah used that time to write her mission report, debrief her team, and finally allow herself to process what had just happened. She'd gone back. She'd done the impossible thing one more time. And now, finally, it was over. When they landed at the forward operating base, an officer was waiting with official papers. Sarah read them carefully, formal orders concluding her recall to active duty and returning her to permanent retired status with full honors. Admiral Patterson had kept his word. She signed the documents, handed them back, and walked away from military service for the second and final time. Morrison caught up with her at the transport plane. "Ma'am, I just want to say, working with you on this mission was the honor of my life. What you did, how you led us the way, you never quit, even when it seemed impossible. That's what it means to be a ghost unit operator. That's what I'll remember for the rest of my career." She studied his young face, saw the warrior he'd become. "You did good, petty officer. You all did. Be proud. Will you ever come back to teach, She thought about it. "I don't know. Maybe. Maybe I've earned the right to figure out who I am when I'm not Night Fox. Maybe I get to just be Sarah for a while. I hope you find that, ma'am. You deserve it." 2 weeks later, Sarah stood in her apartment in Virginia Beach staring at a stack of job offers. Military consulting firms, defense contractors, government agencies, all of them offering substantial money for her expertise. She set them aside and pulled out her laptop, opened a blank document, and began writing. Chapter 1. What they don't tell you about being a warrior. If she couldn't serve by doing, she'd serve by teaching, not through classified missions or combat operations, but through words, through sharing the lessons she'd learned in 12 years of war, through helping the next generation understand what service really meant. Her encrypted phone buzz, she'd kept it just in case. The message was from Park. "Ma'am, I'm back stateside, legs healing. I wanted to thank you properly. You didn't have to come for me. You'd earned your retirement, but you came anyway. That's what Marines do. Semper Fi, Captain. If you ever need anything, I'm here." She smiled and typed a response. "You would have done the same for me, Lieutenant. That's what we do. Take care of that leg. The Corps needs good officers like you." A second message appeared, this one from an unknown number. "Captain Chen. This is Secretary of Defense Morrison, no relation to your petty officer. I'm writing to inform you that you've been selected for the Medal of Honor for actions during Operation Broken Arrow. The ceremony will be held at the White House in 6 weeks. Your presence is requested but not required. However, I hope you'll attend. The country should know what you did." Sarah stared at the message for a long moment. The Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration, the one recognition that truly mattered, but receiving it meant publicity, meant exposure, meant the end of any hope for a quiet life. She thought about her father, about his pride in her service. She thought about the operators who died so Park could escape with that intelligence. She thought about Morrison and Walsh and Chen and Rodriguez, the team that had trusted her to lead them through the impossible. She typed her response, "Mr. Secretary, I'm honored by this recognition, but I must respectfully decline. Ghost unit operators don't receive public commendations. Our work is classified, our identities protected. Accepting this award would compromise operational security for every operator currently serving in similar roles. I hope you understand. The response came 30 minutes later. I do understand, Captain. And your decision only reinforces why you were selected. The medal will be placed in your file as a classified commendation. But know this, the highest levels of government are aware of what you've done. Your service will never be forgotten. Sarah closed her laptop and walked to her balcony. The sun was setting over Virginia Beach, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Below, the base lights were coming on, illuminating the training facilities where she'd taught, the corridor where everything had changed, the parade ground where she'd been honored. Her phone buzzed one last time. A text from Walsh. Captain, heard you decline the Medal of Honor. That's the most Ghost Unit thing I've ever heard. Your father would have been proud. We're all proud. Enjoy your retirement. You earned it. She smiled and set the phone down. For the first time in 20 years, she had no missions pending, no objectives to complete, no enemies to engage, just time, time to write, time to heal, time to figure out who Sarah Chen was when she wasn't being Night Fox. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of salt water and distant storms. Somewhere in the world, other operators were preparing for other missions. The warrior's path continued as it always would. But for Sarah Chen, Captain USMC Force Recon, Ghost Unit 7, retired, the war was finally over. Real warriors don't advertise. They do the job, save the lives that need saving, and then go home to live the life they've earned. They know when to fight and when to hold position. They understand that sometimes the greatest act of courage is choosing peace over glory, family over fame, and life over legend. Sarah Chen had fought. She had served. She had sacrificed. And now, finally, she got to live. The sun set over Virginia Beach, and Night Fox watched the darkness come unafraid, at peace and free.